Hey there, this is C.W. Johnson Jr. Um, I know this is not my typical video that I have on here. Usually it's sort of like my rabbit trail video I did back in December. I've been wanting to do more of those and just haven't had the time to write my sides for them. And a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today actually has to do with what those videos are going to be about. I guess this video is more of a depressed guy with PTSD rants about the nation's current debate uh, over gun control in reaction to mass shootings. Um, so often, one of the first things that gets brought up whenever there's a tragedy like the two we had Friday or Saturday, um, is of course we need gun laws, stricter gun laws, and we need to do something about mental health in this country. And interesting, we don't know yet if either of those guys had mental health issues. We know they were both at different ends of the spectrum politically. One was a socialist, the other one agreed with Trump's rhetoric about immigration being an invasion. At the same time, he also had environmental issues. His stance on that was not in line with Trump's. So we have two tragedies, needless loss of life, um, due to people's political views on both ends of the spectrum. And I just have to say, I don't think this conversation we should be having as a nation shouldn't be about gun control. First off, it shouldn't be about what to do about mental health. It should be about how we as individuals can stop mass shootings from happening again. And I can tell you, as someone who's grown up with a conservative Christian background, both sides into the spectrum here are failing. I haven't slept for the last 24 hours, so my heart's heavy and my blood's boiling. I've sat in the conversations of conservative Christian young people as they've talked about, ridiculed, joked about how certain loners, quiet, reserved, alienated, angry-looking young men were weird and freaky. And both of these young men, one had mental health issues, and the other one was abused when he was a child. You could obviously tell by looking at him. And that brings me to my starting point is, first I want to apologize if my language I drop any words that are four-letter and unkosher during this. Every profile of nearly every shooter says they were a loner. They were angry, alienated, quiet, reserved. Grew up with single mothers, or a lot of them were abused when they were younger. And it seems like every profile, nobody talks about that profile. They talk about mental health. No, maybe we should be talking about how we treat those people. Like so many of the school shooters, Columbine, Parkland, they were bullied by the students, and so it would be addressing that as well. And I say this, when you're depressed, everything is magnified 10 times worse than it really is. I remember when my first serious bout of depression, I remember like friends who I thought I was good buddies with suddenly started ignoring me and acting annoyed whenever I tried to talk to them. Like people would be happy to see everybody in the room but me. Somebody got pictures with everybody in this in this play I was in. They got pictures with all the cast members except me. Stuff like, when you get older, you realize stuff like that just roll off your back like water off a duck's back. But it does have a profound effect on you at the time, and I was pretty upset about it. So we should be talking about attitudes like that people have towards people. We should be talking about the attitude like the young lady who flirted with me for years, flirted every time she could. She got a smile at me, smiled really big, would run off, even turned around in church and smiled big at me, and her mother told her to turn around and look at the sermon preacher. Then I went off to this Christian boot camp thing and had a really traumatic experience there. Came back with I was spiritually abused there, and then came back with not such a great attitude. And all of a sudden, she stopped and she started ignoring me altogether. Well, it turns out that she claims she wasn't flirting with me. She was trying to cheer me up. Of course, how should I know that? She never said so. And of course, when I told her that when I came back from that boot camp experience, she should have had a encouraging word for me, she said, well, guys and girls, they don't owe each other the same means of grace, spiritual service towards each other, which apparently this girl who had won several Bible drill contests missed the verse about there is no male or female in Christ. And when I talked to the pastor about it, about how she would go off to Africa for 2 years, serve as journeyman, how, isn't it rather inconsistent that she's rather standoffish and aloofish to all the people at the church, and the pastor wanted me to accept, and even her parents admitted that it was strange how standoffish and aloofish she was to people in the church, and the pastor wanted me to accept her excuse that she was just trying to cheer me up. Of course, how would I know that she was trying to cheer me up when everything she was doing matched the description of flirting, and she never said a good word to me at all. It's the attitude of a guy who I once thought was one of my best friends. We've been roommates, known each other for about 6 years. And then when he was an authority over me, he falsely accused me in front of someone else, subordinate. And then when I told him, go talk to the people who are in charge of that area, he changed subject to the depression, and he snarled his nose, wrinkled his lip, just squared at me and said, "Do you really think God loves you? I've always wondered about this. Do you really think God loves you?" And then he treated me like somehow because I had depression, that somehow God couldn't use me, I was not worthy to bear his message to others. And even after I presented evidence to him that the accusation that he accused me of not doing something was false, he still didn't tell his subordinate about it. And his subordinate, when he and one of my best friends were interrogating me about why I was depressed when I mentioned something, he interrupted me and said, "That's no reason," scoffed. And then when I went in there later to try to talk to him about how they had treated me, he stuck his finger in my face and said, "You interrupted me?" And he stuck his finger in my face and said, "You need to work on your mood swings." Of course, I left because I know that everything was about to go downhill if I stayed and tried to debate with that, because I was getting pretty angry. So I turned around and walked away. Turns out my best friend didn't even tell him about how the accusation against me was false. And when I confronted that subordinate again, this was at a so-called Christian college that is now defunct, he was like, well, he lectured me on how I shouldn't be bitter. And then when we need to do something about the attitude of the executive director of that school, who, when I told him a little bit about what was going on, he didn't look into it. And then when I told him about how the staff member was behaving in obviously an un-Christian way, he did not remove him. And when I asked to get some compensation for the medical bills I had to go through, because I had to go see a doctor when I got home because of the PTSD that developed because of that and a car crash, that guy, the subordinate, the staff member, his father, was on the board of directors, and he literally sat there and said, "Well, yeah, it's all right that you did that, but it's really your heart that matters. I don't think your heart was in the right place." And I had a list of how everything he did to me was unchristian and unprofessional. He's like, "And that's all good stuff there, but I was just trying to help, and I'm sorry you misunderstood." And the executive director wanted me to accept that kind of BS excuse. And you should do something about the attitude of one of the students there, they sent me an email after I'd gone home, and like, we trust you're doing all right, and I replied, I'm doing terrible, please pray for me. They never even replied back, praying for you. And later when I went to try to get some compensation from school, because those staff members were unqualified to be there in the first place, and she was like, being a victim is always a choice. And when I told her about something, I struggle with depression, she was like, sure, I would love to talk to you about this, but I'm really busy, which is really just a nice way of saying F off. And we need to work on attitudes of people like that, and attitudes of like the pastors at the church that I was going to at the time. I told them about the incident, and they were like, don't feel sorry for yourself, we warned you about going to that school, and get over it. Told them about how I was having suicidal thoughts, and I was like, don't feel sorry for yourself. Of course, then when later I started visiting other churches, then they got worried that I might be thinking about suicide, even though at that time the thought of self-slaughter was not even on my mind. We need to do something about the attitudes of friends, students, and staff members from that college. That after I developed PTSD and finally got it treated, I sent them emails asking for prayers. Like only like 15% of the people I wrote messaged responded. We need to do something about that kind of attitude, about the attitude of a young lady that after I ignored what appeared to be a flirtatious advance upon me, I sent her a message apologizing and offering lunch as a means of just saying, just a lunch after church, as a means of, showing that I was apologetic for how rude I had been. Well, when I told her, she never replied, and this was during the health crisis. And when I told her about my PTSD, she defriended me off of Facebook, told me never to contact her again, and went to the pastor and told him some BS story about how she didn't want to hurt my feelings. And he ambushed me at a meeting he had with me, was asking me all these leading questions, and was saying she's frightened of you, and trying to gaslight me into believing I didn't know what I had seen. And when I told him about the actions of that young lady and how they had pretty much nullified that she didn't want to hurt my feelings, it was like that he hadn't told her to treat me with the same love and compassion that Jesus showed the leopard. He was like, well, we don't see eye to eye on this. We need to work on attitudes like that, attitudes like the girl I thought was a good friend with, and all of a sudden I was just some random person who cluttered up her Facebook and freaked her out that I was interested in her. And when I told her about my bad experience at school, she somehow found it necessary to tell me she had a good experience there. Like, why would he tell somebody that? We just need to do something about these attitudes of people. Oh, well, I can't be bothered with your problems, or you're in sin because you're struggling with depression, or mental illness is a sign of demon possession or sin. We need to do something about that, because obviously mental illness in a fallen world, that has resulted from creation being corrupted by sin, by Adam's sin. So we need to do something about these attitudes that don't show compassion and mercy to mentally ill people who are struggling with depression. Basically, the way you do that is by being a decent human being to everybody you meet. And the reason why I give you these examples is because, A, all those people were conservatives who believe that the main problem is not guns. It's not guns, because guns don't beat themselves up and shoot people by themselves. They think it's mental illness, and mental illness is a sin. And another reason is this happened in 2012, and we had Sandy Hook and Aurora, and I was getting some help in general for my depression, because I didn't want to be yelling, screaming curses at people who weren't there. Because we had children in the house. But when they started talking about taking guns away from people because they're mentally ill, and you realize how throughout history people have used accusations of insanity against other people to just be mercilessly cruel to them. Like the Soviets put dissidents into psychiatric wards. You got the Victorian Edward period when husbands were locking their wives up in an insane asylum so they can get their money, or have an affair, whatever they wanted to. You had, Alan Turing, who basically helped turn the tide of World War II by inventing the computer and breaking Enigma. He was persecuted by his government because they believed he was mentally ill because he was homosexual. So this isn't some right-wing paranoia. This is actual historical evidence that governments have used accusations of insanity to oppress people. And I did not want to automatically lose my First Amendment rights. And I'm not a big, huge gun person. Like, you start talking about the mechanics of them and you've lost me. All I know is you aim at what you want to shoot, always treat it like it's loaded, and don't aim it at anyone unless they're attacking your family. So I stopped getting help. Of course, we got Trump, who's like, how about due process now? Take the guns from him now and due process later. Which totally shows he doesn't understand what due process is. And so I went off the medications I was in. I refused to see a psychiatrist because I thought that would be sticking a thumb in my mouth. And it was a rough few months going off that medication. And I got a job, went back to school, finished college, and I'm now pretty much an independent, productive member of society, trying to get there. So my main point is, they say only you can prevent forest fires, and obviously that's not entirely true. We have to have fire departments to put these wildfires out. But yes, there are things you can do to stop wildfires from happening. And the point is, go out. Stop debating with people on Twitter. Stop ordering your food on these apps. I love capitalism and all this new technology that it's created. Stop ordering your fast food on apps to be brought to your apartment. Go out, eat out, and meet people. Go out to your local park and have a conversation with total strangers. Stop acting like Confederate statues are the problem. I'm sorry, but if somebody spray paints Kill Whitey on a statue of Robert E. Lee, the problem isn't Robert E. Lee, who's been dead for 140 something years. The problem is who's that person who's so angry and bitter they would spray paint Kill Whitey on a statue, public property. Stop taking statues down. Start confronting this bitterness and anger that's causing that to happen. Stop being aghast that the founding fathers owned slaves, and start being aghast that you have young African American people in Chicago who value their own lives and the lives of their fellow man so little that they're killing each other by the dozens, or shooting each other by the dozens, pretty much every weekend in Chicago. That is so young people killing each other should make us as mad as heck. And that's something we should stand up and say, we're not going to take that anymore. Go out, plant a tree, join a book club, go out and get to know your neighbors, these strange, alienated, angry young people. Pay for the person behind you in the grocery line. Give an extra generous tip to your waitress. Pay for that young couple over there with the 3 screaming kids. Pay for them. Stop thinking that somehow your political party has an monopoly on human decency and love. That's something that irritates me about the Democratic Party and the left. They think they somehow are the party of love and tolerance and goodwill, and yet they're yelling F Trump and F you for voting for him and F America. Yes. When that actor, Robert De Niro, went up at the Tonys and cursed our president while he was dealing with a dictator over in Korea, and people stood up and cheered, that was one of the moments when, I'm sorry, the people on the left no longer had the right to talk down to the rest of Americans for voting for Trump. I didn't vote for Trump, Stop calling people racist because they voted for Trump. Stop thinking that Trump pointing out that Baltimore has rats is somehow racist. Stop and find a solution to all those rats in Baltimore. When you see a need, start a ministry or a business to meet that need. Stop expecting the government to come and help us or save us. Stop saying, oh, the Democratic Party is the party of the KKK. Therefore, we Republicans are so much better than they. No. Argue reasonably and logically. Study logic. Pick up a book. Learn an instrument. Have a block party. Stop trying to impose your religious beliefs through government on other people and go out and have a church outreach to these neighborhoods. Stop praying for fire and brimstone to rain on a pride parade and invite your gay friends to church. Because you know what? America is the land of the free, and it's the home of the brave. We need to use that freedom to do what's true, to do what's right. And that's not petitioning the government, Seriously, we whitewash the victims of lynchings during Jim Crow and say if we had been in that time, we would have stood up against the mob. Yet, the Kavanaugh case, the Covenant Boy case, Arizona Starbucks, now when the policemen go, so we still have a mob mentality. We don't stop and listen and get all the facts before we pass judgment. When that lady cornered Flake on that elevator, that was bullying, and said that somehow because how he was handling the situation somehow meant her awful assault didn't matter. That was bullying and emotional manipulation that has no place in our political discourse. Stop complaining about immigrants coming and taking the jobs that you've been telling your children to go to college so they don't have to work those jobs and learn some Spanish. Take kids to the zoo. I don't know how much I can stress this. Condemn the KKK and Antifa in the same breath. People claim that Trump is inciting violence. What about Antifa, who are throwing milkshakes just like the segregationists did on the people during sit-ins back in the 50s on people because they have a MAGA hat on? There's been plenty of violence against people who have MAGA hats on. Okay? That needs to be condemned. Don't get upset that Trump said there are good people on both sides of Charlottesville, because you know what? There are good people on both sides in every conflict, in every debate. Maybe they're not right, but there are good people on both sides. And remember what Alexander Siskowski said? I don't know how to butcher that name, but go read the Archipelago Gulag. He said that the line between right and wrong, we can't separate the bad people from the good. The right between right and wrong crosses between every human heart. Be the change you want to see in this world, just like Gandhi said. Stop expecting the government to be that change. Tighten your belt. Pay your rent. If you're in debt with student loans, work 2 or 3 jobs. Go work on an oil rig. Go be a fisherman up in Alaska for a couple of years. Go work a soul-crushing job on Wall Street for a couple of years and pay off that debt yourself. You might spend 25 years before you get paid off, but at least you'll have the knowledge and you'll have the self-respect to know that you got yourself in a mess and you got yourself out of it. Stop expecting somebody else to come along and pay for it. You know what? And if you have millions of dollars, then when you can help somebody with their student debt, help them with their student debt. Maybe you offer internships at your job where part of their pay is paying off their student debt. Start a game show. And I've seen that where that's happened. The human imagination has no bounds. It's the freest thing in the world. And yet it POs me that whenever somebody creates a wheelchair for that a family can afford because their insurance can't pay for it, that somebody on the left says, oh, that is horrible, that's proof we live in a dystopian society. Or they get upset that a little boy raised funds to pay for his other friends' food debts at their school. Then liberals get upset with that? You're upset with people using their freedom to do the right thing. What is wrong with us today? You see, I have faith in the American people. Because the American people are a force to be reckoned with. They tamed a wilderness, creating a breadbasket that is feeding the entire world today. You heard the story recently about the farmer who had cancer? 60 of his neighbors came together and they harvested his field for them. And that harvest is going to go out throughout the whole world and feed people. You know, the American people have filed 10 million patents, from fertilizer to space rockets. We've defeated statism on two fronts. Stop saying Russia won World War II. We were fighting two different forces during World War II, while Russia was just fighting one. And we defeated both in 1945. The American people's compassion during the Berlin airlift stood up and forced Soviet aggression to step down. We saved the nation of South Korea from communist tyranny. Conservatives, stop saying conservatives are greedy because they don't want their tax money to go to government welfare programs, which are basically plantation-like systems, which keep people in slavery and study after study so as they don't work. Stop saying conservatives are greedy because they want to use their own money to send to that ministry, or to choose the ministry they send it to, or to give it to other people personally. That's not greed. Study after study shows that conservatives are more generous with their own money than liberals are. You know? And stop saying liberals think of soldiers are baby killers because they oppose our reckless foreign policy. And, we built the Panama Canal, which connected the world. Transcontinental Railroad, the Erie Canal. We defeated hate in the streets of Selma. We have dozens of cultures, races, and religions in this country that live peacefully side by side. And I am sick and tired of whenever something racially charged happens, these people go, this is America. No, that is not America. America is the men and women, black and white, gay, liberal, whatever, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, who are living side by side, coexisting peacefully, and being nice to each other. No, that doesn't mean that they agree on everything, but at least they aren't killing each other, like in other countries. Stop saying that those two shooters Saturday, that they are America. No, they are part of America. But the guy you see mowing the lawn for his neighbor, that is America too. So stop acting like that doesn't exist. America is an exceptional country. Our Constitution has survived. It's the longest surviving Constitution in the world. And if I understand right, we're the first Western nation that's majority white to elect a black president. Now, I didn't agree with him on everything, and I think that he has had a role in making this country more diverse. And by the way, if you're a conservative and you're like, oh, well, Obama had children in cages, well, that's no excuse. Trump should take the higher road. And by the way, we do need strong security, not because we're being invaded, but because what is happening at the border is a humanitarian crisis. Those coyotes that are smuggling people across the border, that's not Harriet Tubman Stowe there, or Harriet Tubman. Those coyotes, those people, they rape the women. We need border security to break the back of human traffickers and to discourage people from making the dangerous journey. Stop acting like because you want to abolish ISIS that you're somehow more loving and decent and humane. You know, no political party can take a force as powerful as love and claim it's theirs. You know, think outside the box, study logical thought, study logical fallacies, sit down with people you disagree with and talk with them face to face. Read books. You know, and the American story is an inspirational story. And there's so much I could say about it. You know, we are the most medically advanced nation in the world with hospitals that people from all over the globe come to for treatment. We have more restaurants and stores than you could ever eat or shop at. And if you don't like corporations, if you don't like chain stores, pay the few extra bucks to go eat local. Go find the local store, locally owned store, and shop there, even though it might cost you time and money. That's the price of freedom. And if you think that's not inspirational for you enough, let me tell you about a guy named C.W. Johnson Jr., who didn't read proficiently until he was 16. And in about 10 years, he had read about 800 books. I've lost count. He struggled. His entrance into college was delayed by several years because math was holding up his GED and his SAT. And then he had to go go on and on taking these math pre-exercise courses, even though he'd gotten really good grades on everything else, but because he had one area that he was poor in, he felt he couldn't graduate. And I tell you what, he felt like a three-legged horse. You know, one bad horse, one bad leg, you're shot. But he kept persevering, and he graduated with an A in math and a GPA of 3.7 or something. You know, he was abused spiritually, mentally, and psychologically. He developed PTSD, yet he's still a productive member of society. He's learning how to pay his own bills, to budget, to hold a job, to be independent. And if he can do that, then surely you can go and talk to your angry, alienated, bitter, resentful, mean loner over there, you know, who you're scared of. You know what? Because I was once that person. Yeah, I did think about violent acts against people who probably, if this was a Bruce Willis movie, would have deserved it. But I chose not to do that because I knew that would not solve anything. It would prove my views as right, that I was weak, ruin my reputation, would hurt my family, and mar the image of Christ before a watching world. So I didn't do that. I didn't kill myself. I realized that those kind of thoughts aren't worth killing yourself over. Yes, there are nights I go to bed, I hope I don't wake up, but I wake up the next morning and I face the dawn. That takes bravery. I've learned to apologize when I curse because of my PTSD. I've learned that just because I was falsely accused of not doing something, and even though that memory comes back whenever the opportunity to do that thing I was falsely accused of not doing, I do it. I've learned how to do that, control my emotions, and not let my emotions tell me how to feel. And if I can do that, you can. And if I can do that, you can go talk to your neighbor, to that alienated, angry, bitter young man who has guns. Go talk to him about his guns. If he says he hates black and Hispanic people, show him the error of his ways. If he says he hates Wall Street and corporations, show him the error of his ways. But don't act like he's the problem. You are. The fact that you don't care about it, you want to take away his guns without actually getting to know him, that's the problem. Go ask him to do a shooting tournament to raise funds for cancer research. You see, the problem isn't guns or mental illness. It's us. Only we can prevent mass shootings. Well, how? By being decent human beings. to everybody we meet. You return the email, the private message. You say no thank you if you don't want to go out with somebody. You don't play with them. Just be a decent, like they say, like everybody you meet is fighting in 1,000 battles. Be kind, We tell that to children and teenagers, but somehow when we become adults, we forget it. I don't get it, I know I've said too much here. And there's a lot more I could say. If you want to see a lot more, what else I have to say about this, you can go to my Facebook page, C.W. Johnson Jr. And you see the picture of me on the Badlands of North Dakota. Go read my note there, all right? And see what I'm talking about. And stop delegating your duty, your responsibility to be a decent human being, to be an adult, to demagogues hundreds, thousands of miles away in Washington, D.C. We are the American people. The government is by and far and of us. We are the ones who created this country. It wasn't the government. It wasn't the military. It was the people. And it was people pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps, learning the budget, not complaining about, the baby boomers had it easier. If you think being sent to Vietnam was easy, you have another thing coming. And don't get me started on the Cold War. You had kids hiding under their, I know I'm off topic here, but this generation of young people isn't the first to face fear of attack in a school. Go back and look at some of those pictures of kids hiding under desks in their schools because they're afraid of a nuclear bomb was going to blow up any day. Because that's what the Cold War was about. It was about freedom versus tyranny. And I am sick and tired of young people in this country saying, getting rid of Obamacare, that's freedom to die. Well, so what? Maybe that's the price of freedom. You know what? If I get killed in a mass shooting, that's the price of freedom I'm willing to pay. Because I don't want to see someone else use their Second Amendment rights de facto. Australian gun control won't work in America. We got guns coming across the southern border. Build a wall to stop that, okay? We are the people, Christ said, love your neighbor as yourself, and that is not a political statement. That is not a doctrine for the government. That is for us as individual human beings made in the image of God. To love our neighbor. And how hard is that? You use your freedom responsibly. John Adams said our Constitution was made for a moral people. And the mayor of El Paso has just said the only handbook he knows about how to confront evil is the Bible. So love your neighbor as yourself, just like Christ commanded. And if we learn to do that, and especially learn to love our alienated, angry, resentful, bitter, weird loner over there as ourself, then maybe we won't see it completely gone, but we will see gun violence in America reduced in this nation under God. So this is C.W. Johnson Jr., and I can tell you as someone who struggles with depression and PTSD that the best way you can stop violence is love people.